गुरुदेव की जय। नितिल विश्व विष्णुपाद अष्टोत्तर शतस्मर शिल भक्ति वेदांत वामन गोसाई महाराज की जय। नितिल विश्व विष्णुपाद अष्टोत्तर शतस्मर शिल भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज शिल प्रभुपाद की जय। नितिल विश्व विष्णुपाद अष्टोत्तर शतस्मर शिल भक्ति विज्ञान केशव गोसाई महाराज की जय। नितिल विश्व विष्णुपाद अष्टोत्तर शतस्मर शिल भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोसाई प्रभुपाद की जय। नितिल विश्व महाभागवत शिल गोक्षर स्वामीजी महाराज की जय। नितिल विश्व शिल सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय। नितिल विश्व वैष्णव सार्वभौम शिल जगन्नाथ दास बाबूजी महाराज की जय। श्री रूप गौरी गुरु वर्ग की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल पतदास रघुनाथ शार गोसाई प्रभु की जय। श्री स्वरूप दामोदर राय रमानंदारी श्री गौर पार्षद वृंद की जय। नाम छलाही रस ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल भज मंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अभिष्ट प्रदात गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री राधा कुंज श्याम कुंज की जय। श्री मुनि देवी गंगा देवी की जय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। शक्ति देवी की जय। श्री पूर्णमासी योग माया की जय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री शिल भक्ति रक्षक श्री गोसाई महाराज की जय। तृतीय शुभ तिरुभाव तिथि की जय। साई वारे से तिरुभाव आविर्भाव तिथि की जय। श्री वीरचंद्र प्रभु की जय। तृतीय आविर्भाव तिथि की जय। वीरचंद्र इज नित्यानंद प्रभु's son. श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्रीनिताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। All right. ओम ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय राधिकाय प्रियात्मने श्रीमद्भक्तिवेदान्त नारायणेति नामिने। नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनेति नामिने। पञ्चकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरतिशे नमः। पूर्वे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकाय तदालय कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तद्भक्ताय नमो नमः। यं प्रव्रजन्तम् अनुपेतमपेतकृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरहकातर आजुहावो पुत्रेति तन्मयतया तरवोऽभिनेदुस् तं सर्वभूतहृदयं मुनिमानतोऽस्मि। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयम् उदीरयेत्। शृण्वतं स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तन हृदन्तस्तो ह्यभद्राणि विधुनोति सुहृत्सतम्। नष्टप्रायेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवत्युत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय राधे त्वां नायमं चरणन्तिकम्। भक्त्या विहीना अपराधलक्षाय क्षिप्ताष्टकामादितरङ्गमध्ये कृपामयि तं शरणं प्रपन्ना वृन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दम्। भज श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्तवृंद। Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. All right. Let me share this other screen. All right, so I'm not sure if you saw what the description, like what I wrote in the description. I'm only going to read very little every day because it's too busy of a Kartik, it's too much to do, and I keep on falling asleep while reading anyways just because I'm a bit overwhelmed. So, yeah, after Kartik I'll be able to start reading more, and hopefully I'll be able to make summaries and prepare more and all that. But now it's just going to be very simple. So, okay, Chapter 9, Answering by Citing the Lord's Version. Text 1. Shri Shuka Uvacha Atmamaya Mrite Rajan Parasyanu Bhavatmana Nagate Tartha Sambandha Swapna Drashtur Ivanjasa. Srila Shukadeva Goswami said, O King, unless one is influenced by the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no meaning to the relationship of the pure soul and pure consciousness with the material body. That relationship is just like a dreamer seeing his own body working. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Maharaj Parikshit's question as to how a living entity began his material life, although he is apart from the material body and mind, is perfectly answered. The spirit soul is distinct from the material conception of his life, but he is absorbed in such a material conception because of being influenced by the external energy of the Lord called Atma Maya. This has already been explained in the first canto in connection with Vyasadev's realization of the Supreme Lord and his external energy. The external energy is controlled by the Lord, and all the living entities are controlled by the external energy, by the will of the Lord. Therefore, although the living entity is purely conscious in his pure state, he is subordinate to the will of the Lord and being influenced by the external energy of the Lord. And the Bhagavad Gita 15:15, also the same thing is confirmed. The Lord is present within the heart of every living entity, and all the living entities' consciousness and forgetfulness are influenced by the Lord. Now, the next question automatically made will be why the Lord influences the living entity to such consciousness and forgetfulness. This begs the question, why the living entity, why the Lord influences the living entity to such consciousness and forgetfulness. The answer is that the Lord clearly wishes that every living entity be in his pure consciousness as part and parcel of the Lord, and thus be engaged in the loving service of the Lord as he is constitutionally made. But because the living entity is partially independent also, he may not be willing to serve the Lord, but may try to become as independent as the Lord is. All the non-devotee living entities are desirous of becoming equally as powerful as the Lord, although they are not fit to become. The living entities are illusioned by the will of the Lord because they wanted to become like him, like a person who thinks of becoming a king without possessing the necessary qualification. Like that kind of person, when the living entity desires to become the Lord himself, he is put in a condition of dreaming that he is a king. Therefore, the first sinful will of the living entity is to become the Lord. And the consequent will of the Lord is that the living entity forget his factual life and thus dream of the land of utopia, where he may become one like the Lord. But why does the Lord want that? Anyways, The child cries to have the moon from the mother, and the mother gives the child a mirror to satisfy the crying, disturbing child with the reflection of the moon. Similarly, the crying child of the Lord is given over to the reflection, the material world, to lord it over as karmi, to give this up in frustration to become one with the Lord. I mean, the Lord wants us to be independent. That's why He gives us the jewel of independence. What is it called? Swadi Nata Ratnadhani. No, how did pennies? There is no necessity of tracing out the history of when the living entity desired this, because it's been since time immemorial. But the fact is that as soon as he desired it, he was put under the control of Atma Maya by the direction of the Lord. Therefore, the living entity in his material condition is dreaming falsely that this is mine and this is I. The dream is that the conditioned soul thinks of his material body as I, or falsely thinks that he is the Lord, and that everything in connection with that material body is mine. Thus, only in dream does the misconception of I and mine persist, life after life. This continues life after life, as long as the living entity is not purely conscious of his identity as the subordinate part and parcel of the Lord. In its pure consciousness, however, there is no such misconceived dream. And in that pure consciousness, in that pure conscious state, the living entity does not forget that he is never the Lord, but that he is eternally the servitor of the Lord in transcendental love. Bahurupa iva bhati mayaya bahurupaya ramamano guneshvasya mamaham iti manyate. The illusion living entity appears in so many forms offered by the external energy of the Lord. While enjoying in the modes of material nature, the encaged living entity misconceives, thinking in terms of I and mine. Purports. The different forms of the living entities are different dresses offered by the illusory external energy of the Lord according to the modes of nature. According to the modes of nature. Sorry. Let me reread that. The different forms of the living entities are different dresses offered by the illusory energy. External energy of the Lord according to the modes of material nature, the living being desires to enjoy. That is an interesting sentence. The external material energy is represented by her three modes, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance. So even in the material nature, there is a chance of an independent choice by the living entity. And according to his choice, the material energy offers him different varieties of material bodies. There are bodies, 1,100,000 worms and reptiles, 1,000,000 forms of birds. Together, there are 8,400,000 varieties of bodies in different planets of the universe. And the living entity is traveling by so many transmigrations according to different modes of enjoying spirits within himself. Even in one particular body, the living entity changes from childhood to boyhood, from boyhood to youth, from youth to old age, and from old age to another body created by his own action. The living entity creates his own body by his personal desires, and the external energy of the Lord supplies him the exact form by which he can enjoy his desires to the fullest extent. The tiger wanted to enjoy the blood of another animal, and therefore, by the grace of the Lord, the material energy supplied him the body of the tiger, with facilities for enjoying blood from another animal. Similarly, a living being desiring to get a body of a demigod in a higher planet can also get it by the grace of the Lord. And if he is intelligent enough, he can desire to get a spiritual body to enjoy the company of the Lord, and he will get it. So the minute freedom of the living entity can be fully utilized, and the Lord is so kind that he will award the living entity the same type of body he desires. That's why, what is the prayer by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur? We just sang it yesterday. No, we sang it the day before yesterday. Veshaye je priti achaye amara she mata priti ho charane taman. Means It's Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is praying, "Oh Lord, may I love you in the same way that I currently love all my material like all the material sense objects. May I love you in that same way." If we could only just love Krishna as much as we love the material world, we would be perfect. We would be Mahabhagavats. The only time is that the only problem is we just don't want him. So the living entity's desiring is like dreaming of a golden mountain. A person knows what a mountain is, and he knows also what gold is. Out of his desire only, he dreams of a golden mountain, and when the dream is over, he sees something else in his presence. He finds in his awakened state that there is neither gold nor a mountain, and what to speak of a golden mountain. The different positions of the living entities in the material world under the multifarious manifestations of bodies are due to the misconception of mine and I. The karmi thinks of this world as mine, and the jnani thinks, I am everything. The whole material conception of politics, sociology, philanthropy, altruism, etc., conceived by the conditioned souls, is on the basis of this misconceived I and mine, which are products of a strong desire to enjoy material life. Identification with the body and the place where the body is obtained under different conceptions of socialism, nationalism, family affection, and so on and so forth, is all due to forgetfulness of the real nature of the living entity, and the whole misconception of the bewildered living entity can be removed by the association of Shukadeva Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit, as all this is explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Yarhi Baba Mahimni Sve Parasmin Kala Mayaya Ramita Gata Samohas Tyaktvo Daste Tado Bhayam. As soon as the living entity becomes situated in its transcendental glory and begins to enjoy the transcendence beyond time and material energy, he at once gives up the two misconceptions of life, I and mine, and thus becomes fully manifested as the pure self. Reports, the two misconceptions of life, namely I and mine, are verily manifested in two classes of men. And the lower state of the conception of mine, in the lower state, the conception of mine is very prominent, and in the higher state, the misconception of I is prominent. In the animal state of life, the misconception of mine is perceivable, even in the categories of cats and dogs, who fight with one another with the same misconception of mine. In the lower stage of human life, the same misconception is also prominent in the shape of, it is my body, it is my house, it is my family, it is my caste, it is my nation, it is my country, and so on. And in the higher stage of speculative knowledge, the same misconception of mine is transformed into I am, or it is all I am, etc. There are many classes of men comprehending the same misconception of I and mine in different colors. But the real significance of I can be realized only when one is situated in the consciousness of I am the eternal servitor of the Lord. Wait a second. This is pure consciousness, and the whole Vedic literatures teach us this conception of life. The misconception of I am the Lord, or I am the Supreme, is more dangerous than the misconception of mine. Although there are sometimes directions in the Vedic literatures to think of oneself one with the Lord, that does not mean that one becomes identical with the Lord in every respect. Undoubtedly, there is oneness of the living entity with the Lord in many respects, but ultimately, the living entity is subordinate to the Lord, and he is constitutionally meant for satisfying the senses of the Lord. The Lord therefore asked the conditioned souls to surrender unto him. Had the living entities not been subordinate to the Supreme Will, why would the living entity be asked to surrender? Had the living being been equal in all respects, then why had he been put under the influence of Maya? We have already discussed many times that the material energy is controlled by the Lord. The Bhagavad Gita 9.10 confirms this controlling power of the Lord over the material nature. Can a living entity who claims to be as good as the Supreme Being control the material nature? The foolish I would reply, the foolish I would reply that he will do so in the future. Even accepting that in the future one will be as good as a controller of the material nature as the Supreme Being, then why is one now under the control of material nature? The Bhagavad Gita says that one can be freed from this control of the material nature by surrendering unto the Supreme Lord. But if there is no surrender, then the living entity will never be able to control the material nature. So one must also give up his misconception of I by practicing the way of devotional service, or finally being situated in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. A poor man without any employment or occupation may undergo so many troubles in life. But if by chance the same man gets a good service under the government, he at once becomes happy. There is no profit in denying the supremacy of the Lord, who is the controller of all energies. But one should be constitutionally situated in one's own glory, namely to be situated in the pure consciousness of being the eternal servitor of the Lord. In his conditional life, the living entity is a servant of the illusory Maya, and in his liberated state, he is the pure, unqualified servant of the Lord. To become untinged by the modes of material nature is the qualification for entering into the service of the Lord. As long as one is a servant of mental concoctions, one cannot be completely free from the disease of I and mine. The Supreme Truth is uncontaminated by the illusory energy because he is the controller of that energy. The relative truths are apt to be engrossed in an illusory energy. The best purpose is served, however, when one is directly facing the Supreme Truth as one faces the sun. The sun overhead in the sky is full of light, but when the sun is not visible in the eye, but when the sun is not visible in the sky, all is in darkness. Similarly, when one is face to face with the Supreme Lord, he is freed from all illusions, and one who is not so is in the darkness of illusory Maya. The Bhagavad Gita confirms this as follows. This is a long purport. Okay. Namang chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatitaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. So the science of bhakti yoga, of worshipping the Lord, glorifying the Lord, hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam from the right sources, not from the professional men, but from a person who is Bhagavatam in life, and being always in the association of pure devotees, should be adopted in earnestness. One should not be misled by misconceptions of I and mine. The karmis are fond of the conception of mine. The jnanis are fond of the conception of I. And both of them are unqualified to be free from the bondage of the illusory energy. Srimad Bhagavatam and primarily the Bhagavad Gita are both meant for delivering a person from the misconception of I and mine. And Srila Vyasadeva transcribed them for the deliverance of the fallen souls. The living entity has to be situated in a transcendental position where there is no more influence of time, nor of the material energy. In the conditioned life, the living entity is subjected to the influence of time and the dream of past, present, and future. The mental speculator tries to conquer the influences of time by future speculations of becoming Vasudeva, or the Supreme Lord himself, by means of culturing knowledge and conquering over ego. But the process is not perfect. The perfect process is to accept Lord Vasudeva as the supreme in everything. And the best perfection in culturing knowledge is to surrender unto him, because he is the source of everything. Only in that conception can one get rid of the misconception of I and mine. Both Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam confirm it. Srila Vyasadeva has specifically contributed to the illusions living entity. Srila Vyasadeva has specifically contributed to the illusions, living entities, the science of God, and the process of bhakti yoga in his great literature, Srimad Bhagavatam. And the conditioned soul should fully take advantage of this great science. Atma tattva vishuddhartam yad aha bhagavan ritam brahmane darshayan rupam avyalika vratadrita. O king, the personality of Godhead, being very much pleased with Lord Brahma because of his non-deceptive penance and bhakti yoga, presented his eternal transcendental form before Brahma. And that is the objective goal for purifying the conditioned soul. Sorry, guys. Okay. O king. Sorry. Purport. Okay. Purport. Atma Tattva is the science of both God and the living entity. Both the Supreme Lord and the living entity are known as Atma. The Supreme Lord is called Paramatma, and the living entity is called Atma, the Brahma or the Jiva. Both the Paramatma and the Jivatma, being transcendental to the material energy, are called Atma. So Shukadev Goswami explains this verse with the aim of purifying the truth of both the Paramatma and the Jivatma. Generally, people have so many wrong conceptions about both of them. The wrong conception of the Jivatma is to identify the material body with the pure soul, and the wrong conception of Paramatma is to think of him on an equal level with the living entity. But both misconceptions can be removed by one stroke of bhakti yoga. Just as in the sunlight, both the sun and the material world, and everything within the sunlight are... oh God. I'm sitting up straight. But both misconceptions can be removed by one stroke of bhakti yoga. Just as in the sunlight, both the sun and the world, and everything within the sunlight are properly seen. In the darkness, one cannot see the sun, nor himself, nor the world. But in the sunlight, one can see the sun, himself, and the world around him. Srila Shukadev Goswami therefore says that for purification of both wrong conceptions, the Lord presented his eternal form before Brahmaji, being fully satisfied by Brahma's non-deceptive vow of discharging bhakti yoga. Except for bhakti yoga, any method for realization of Atma Tattva, or the science of Atma, will prove deceptive in the long run. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that only by bhakti yoga can one know him perfectly, and then one can enter into the science of God. Brahmaji undertook great penance in performing bhakti yoga, and thus he was able to see the transcendental form of the Lord. This transcendental form is 100% spiritual, and one can see him only by spiritualized vision after proper discharge of tapasya or penance in pure bhakti yoga. The form of the Lord manifested before Brahma. The form of the Lord manifested before Brahma is not one of the forms with which we have experience in the material world. Brahmaji did not perform such severe types of penance just to see a form of material production. Therefore, the question by Maharaj Parikshit about the form of the Lord is answered. The form of the Lord is Satchidananda, Brahma Samhita 5.1, or eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. But the material form of the living entity is neither eternal nor full of knowledge, nor blissful. That is the distinction between the form of the Lord and that of the conditioned soul. This conditioned soul, however, can regain his form of eternal knowledge and bliss simply by seeing the Lord by means of bhakti yoga. The summary is that due to ignorance, the conditioned soul is engaged in the temporary varieties of material forms. But the Supreme Lord has no such temporary form like the conditioned souls. He is always possessed of an eternal form of knowledge and bliss. And that is the difference between the Lord and the living entity. One can understand this difference by the process of bhakti yoga. Brahma was then told by the Lord the gist of the Srimad Bhagavatam in 4 original verses. Thus, Srimad Bhagavatam is not a creation of the mental speculators. The sound of Srimad Bhagavatam is transcendental, and the resonance of Srimad Bhagavatam is as good as that of the Vedas. Thus, the topic of the Srimad Bhagavatam is the science of both the Lord and the living entity. Regular reading or hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam is also performance of Bhakti Yoga, and one can attain the highest perfection simply by the association of Srimad Bhagavatam. Both Shukadeva Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit attained perfection through the medium of Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. Let's see. Saadideva Jagatam Paraguru Swadeshnamastaya Sisrikshaya Kakshata Tamnadyagacha Drishamatra Sammatam Prapancha Nirmana Vidiryaya Bhavit. Lord Brahma, the first spiritual master, supreme in the universe, could not trace out the source of his lotus seat, and while thinking of creating the material world, he could not understand the proper direction for such creative work, nor could he find out the process of such creation. Purport. This verse is the prelude for explaining the transcendental nature of the form and the abode of the Lord. In the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, it has already been said that the Supreme Absolute Truth exists in his own abode without any touch of the deluding energy. Therefore, the kingdom of God is not a myth, but factually a different and transcendental sphere of planets known as the Vaikunthas. This will also be explained in this chapter. Such knowledge of the spiritual sky far above the material sky and its paraphernalia can be known only by dint of devotional service or bhakti yoga. The power of creation by Lord Brahma was also achieved by bhakti yoga. Brahmaji was bewildered in the matter of creation, and he could not even trace out the source of his own existence. But all this knowledge was fully achieved by him through the medium of bhakti yoga. By bhakti yoga, one can know the Lord, and by knowing the Lord as the Supreme, one is able to know everything else. One who knows the Supreme knows everything else. That is the version of all Vedas. Even the first spiritual master of the universe was enlightened by the grace of the Lord. And so who else can attain the perfect knowledge of everything without the mercy of the Lord? If anyone desires to seek perfect knowledge of everything, he must seek the mercy of the Lord, and there is no other means. To seek knowledge on the strength of one's personal attempt is a sheer waste of time. Sachintayan daksharanekadam pasya upashrinodvirgaditam vacho vivu svarsheshu yat sodasham ekavingsham nishkinchananam nirpayadhanam vidu. Okay. While thus engaged in thinking in the water, Brahmaji heard twice from nearby 2 syllables joined together. One of the syllables was taken from the 16th, and the other was taken from the 21st of the Sparsha alphabets, but both joined to become the wealth of the renounced order of life. In Sanskrit language, the consonant alphabets are divided into 2 divisions, namely Sparsha Varnas and the Talavya Varnas. From Ka to Ma, the letters are known as the Sparsha Varnas. And the 16th of the group is called Ta, whereas the 21st letter is called Pa. So when they are joined together, the word tapa, or penance, is constructed. This penance is the beauty and wealth of the Brahmins, and the renounced orders of life. This penance is the beauty and wealth of the Brahmas and the renounced order of life. According to Bhagavat philosophy, every human being is meant simply for this tapa and for no other business. because by penance only can one realize his self, and self-realization, not sense gratification, is the business of human life. This tapa, or penance, was begun from the very beginning of the creation, and it was first adopted by the Supreme Spiritual Master, Lord Brahma. By tapasya only can one get the profit of human life, and not be a polished civilization of animal life. The animal does not know anything except sense gratification and the jurisdiction of eat, drink, be merry, and enjoy. But the human being is made to undergo tapasya for going back to Godhead, back to home. When Lord Brahma was perplexed about how to construct the material manifestations in the universe, and went down within the water to find out the means and the source of his lotus seat, he heard the word tapa vibrated twice. Taking the path of tapa is the second birth of the desiring disciple. The word upashranot is very significant. It is similar to upanaya, or the beginning of the disciple nearer to the spiritual master for the path of tapa. Upanayam is when you get the Brahma thread. So Brahmaji was thus initiated by Lord Krishna, and the fact is corroborated by Brahmaji. It was corroborated by Brahmaji himself in his book, the Brahma Samhita. In the Brahma Samhita, Lord Brahma has sung in every verse, Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Thus Brahma was initiated by the Krishna mantra, by Lord Krishna himself, and thus he became a Vaishnava, or a devotee of the Lord, before he was able to construct the huge universe. It is stated in the Brahma Samhita that Lord Brahma was initiated into the 18th letter Krishna mantra, which is generally accepted by all the devotees of the Lord. We should follow the same principle because we belong to the Balaram Sampadaya. Directly in the We follow in the same principle because we belong to the Brahma Sampradaya, directly in a disciplic chain from Brahma to Narad, from Narad to Vyas, from Vyas to Madhva Muni, from Madhva Muni to Madhavendra Puri, from Madhavendra Puri to Ishwar Puri, from Ishwar Puri to Lord Chaitanya, and gradually to His Divine Grace, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, our Divine Master. One who is thus initiated in a disciplic succession is able to achieve the same result or power of creation. Chanting of this holy mantra is the only shelter of the desireless, pure devotee of the Lord. Simply by such tapasya or penance, the pure devotee of the Lord achieves all perfections like Lord Brahma. Nishamyatar vaktri didrikshaya disho vilokya tatranyar upashaya mana swadishnemastaya vimisrija vimishryataraditam tapasyupadishta iva dade mana. When he heard the sounds, he tried to find the speaker, searching on all sides. But when he was unable to find anyone besides himself, he thought it was wise to sit down on his lotus feet firmly and give his attention to the execution of penance, as he was instructed. Guys, I am really tired right now. I think I'm just going to end here. Now, let me read this purport. Purports. To achieve success in life, one should follow the example of Lord Brahma, the first living creature in the beginning of the creation. After being initiated by the Supreme Lord to execute tapasya, he was fixed in his determination to do it. And although he could not find anyone besides himself, he could rightly understand that the sound was transmitted by the Lord himself. Brahma was the only living being at that time because there was no other creation, and none could be found there except himself. And the beginning of the first canto, in the first chapter, first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, It has already been mentioned that Brahma was initiated by the Lord from within. The Lord is within every living entity as the Supersoul, and he initiated Brahma because Brahma was willing to receive the initiation. The Lord can similarly initiate everyone who is inclined to have it. As already stated, Brahma is the original spiritual master for the universe, and since he was initiated by the Lord himself, the message of Srimad Bhagavatam is coming down by cyclic succession, and in order to receive the real message of Srimad Bhagavatam, one should approach a current link or one should be And in order to receive the real message of Srimad Bhagavatam, one should approach the current link, or spiritual master, and the chain of the cyclic succession. After being initiated by the proper spiritual master in that chain of succession, one should engage himself in the discharge of tapasya and the execution of devotional service. One should not, however, think himself on the level of Brahma to be initiated directly by the Lord from inside, because in the present age, no one can be accepted to be as pure as Brahma. The post of Brahma to officiate in the creation of the universe is offered to the most pure living being, and unless one is so qualified, one could not expect to be treated like Brahmaji directly. But one can have the same facility through unalloyed devotees of the Lord, through scriptural instructions as revealed in the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam especially, and also through the bona fide spiritual master available to the sincere soul. The Lord himself appears as the spiritual master to a person who is sincere in heart about serving the Lord. Therefore, the bona fide spiritual master who happens to meet the sincere devotee should be accepted as the most confidential and most beloved representative of the Lord. If a person is posted under the guidance of such a bona fide spiritual master, it may be accepted without any doubt that the desiring person has achieved the grace of the Lord. Devyam sahasabdam amogam darshana jita nilatma vijato vyadindriya atapyatav sma kilas lokatapanam tapastapi yang tapatam samahita. Lord Brahma underwent penances for 1,000 years by the calculations of the demigods. He heard this transcendental vibration from the sky, and he accepted it as divine. Thus he controlled his mind and senses, and the penances he executed were a great lesson for the living entities. Thus he is known as the greatest of all ascetics. Okay. This is the last purport. I'm ending after this. Lord Brahma heard the occult sound tapa, occult, but he did not see the person who vibrated the sound, and still he accepted the instruction as beneficial for him, and therefore engaged himself in meditation for 1,000 celestial years. 1 celestial year is equal to 6 times 30 times 12 times 1,000 of our years. His acceptance of the sound was due to his pure vision of the absolute nature of the Lord, and due to his correct vision, he made no distinction between the Lord and of the Lord's instructions. There is no difference between the Lord and the sound vibration coming from him, even though he is not personally present. The best way of understanding is to accept such divine instruction, and Brahma, the prime spiritual master of everyone, is a living example of this process of receiving transcendental knowledge. The potency of the transcendental sound is never minimized, because the vibrator is apparently absent. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam, or Bhagavad Gita, or any revealed scripture in the world, is never to be accepted as an ordinary mundane sound without transcendental potency. One has to receive the transcendental sound from the right source, accept it as a reality, and persecutes the direction without hesitation. Prosecute, yeah. The secret of success is to receive the sounds from the right source of a bona fide spiritual master. Mundane manufactured sound has no potency, and as such, seemingly transcendental sound received from the unauthorized person also has no potency. One should be qualified enough to discern such transcendental potency, and either by discriminating or by fortunate chance, if one is able to receive the transcendental sound from the bona fide spiritual master, His path of liberation is guaranteed. The disciple, however, must be ready to execute the order of the bona fide spiritual master as Lord Brahma executed the instruction of his spiritual master, the Lord himself. Following the order of the bona fide spiritual master is the only duty of the disciple. And this completely faithful execution of the order of the bona fide spiritual master is the secret of success. Lord Brahma controlled his 2 grades of senses by means of sense perception and sense organs because he had to engage such senses in the execution of the bhakti order. Sorry. It's over. Oh my God, I'm almost there. Lord Brahma controlled his 2 grades of senses by means of sense perception and sense organs because he had to engage such senses in the execution of the order of the Lord. Therefore, controlling the senses means engaging them in the transcendental service of the Lord. The Lord's order descends in disciplic succession through the bona fide spiritual master, and thus execution of the order of the bona fide spiritual master is factual control of the senses. Such execution of penance in full faith and sincerity made by Brahmaji so powerful that he became the creator of the universe. And because he was able to attain such power, he is called the best amongst all the tapasvis. Made it. All right. Sorry guys about my falling asleep big time. I'm not always this bad. It's just occasionally when I have a meeting with somebody in the West and I end up going to sleep at like midnight and then I wake up at 4. Alright, I am going to do very quick little kirtan. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Gaur Hare Bol, Nitai Gaur Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Nitai Gaur Hare Bol. Jai Shishi Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari, Shishi Radha Vinod Bihari Ju Ki Jai, Shri Govinda Gopinath Madan Mohan Ju Ki Jai, Nityalapa Vishram Vishnupad Ashtatara Shatashmar, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Gosai Maharaj, Srila Gurudev Ki Jai, Nityalapa Vishram Vishnupad Ashtatara Shatashmar, Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Nityalapa Vishram Vishnupad Ashtatara Shatashmar, Srila Bhakti Vigyan Keshav Gosai Maharaj Ki Jai, Nityalapa Vishram Vishnupad Ashtatara Shatashmar, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosai Prabhupada Ki Jai, Nityalapa Vishra Maha Bhagavat Srila Gokshara Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai, Nityalapa Vishra Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai, Nityalapa Vishra Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai, Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga Ki Jai, Shri Rup Sanatan Pata Raghunath, Shri Jeev Gopal Patadash Raghunath Shar Gosai Prabhu Ki Jai, Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gopal Shad Vrinda Ki Jai, Namachay Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Kshetra Mandal Gaura Mandal Vrajamandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Sarva Abhishta Pradata Giriraj Maharaj ki jai. Shri Radha Kund Shama Kund ki jai. Shri Yamuna Devi Ganga Devi ki jai. Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Shri Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shri Purnamasi Yogamaya ki jai. Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Samagata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Nitai Gaura Premanand Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Nityalapa Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatara Shatashmad Shila Bhakti Rakshak Shira Gosai Maharaj ki jai. Tadiya Shubha Avirbhav Titi ki jai. Shri Virachandra Prabhu ki jai. Nityananda Putra Virachandra Prabhu ki jai. Shri Tadiya Shubha Avirbhav Titi ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Samagata Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavashacha Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi Satyavatai Namo Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Thanks for being so patient with me while I'm falling asleep. Yeah, it's not all the time I'm going to be like this, just sometimes. Only, as I said, only when I have a meeting at nighttime. All right. Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Shri Gurudev, Jai Shri Prabhupada.